Hello and welcome to LanguageCraft for episode 12 of Let's Timelapse. Now, to start us off, we're passing by the big church that we finished in the last episode, the first monument of our town. And we're above the main square and coming by the brand new neighborhood that has appeared since the last episode. Now, you know that I build a group of houses between each episode. These are not quite finished, but they should be quite soon. But today we're going back towards the countryside and the fields. Today's episode will be focused on two structures that are situated in this area. On the one hand, we have the farm, which will go right here with several buildings surrounding a courtyard. And over here, we have a manor, in this great spot with a bay along the coast. I already laid out a few patterns, such as a pier. First off, the farm. It will be right next to the fields. Now, it might strike you as strange to have it so close to the shore, but you'll see that with a little twist it works out fine. We'll talk about it when the camera gets there. For those of you who still have the layout of the village in mind, we had originally planned to have two manors, but as we'll talk about later, it's sort of a special structure, and two would have been strange. One is already peculiar. So we replaced one with a farm, which works out perfect. It was definitely missing. We had an inn, a building to stock your produce, and stables. But the farm is a community building, around which a lot of farmers will center their lives. When I asked Orendo about farms, he said that today we have huge farms that are run by a single family, because technology allows us to work it like that. At the time, however, it was much harder, and it was impossible to work a large field alone. That's why the fields are small and there are a lot of houses. So we have something much more open. Everything is able to come and store things, for a fee I suppose. Earlier on I talked about something special when a farm was so close to shore, and here we come to it. The wall I'm working on is entirely made out of stone. But I thought we said that stone was very rare and expensive, should be reserved for the center of the village. Well, the thing is, the harvest was extremely important, and it was easy to lose it at that time. These stone walls are here to keep the moisture away and prevent mold from settling in. That's why the only stone wall is turned towards the ocean. There is historical evidence that peoples as far as the Greeks used this technique. It is also important to note that the stone wall was often in good shape, because even the local lord would help the farmers to maintain it. Simply put, if the farmers don't have a harvest, no one can eat, and they can't pay their taxes. Now, I did want to keep the same feeling as the rest of the village, so it looks all broken down, but it was important to have mostly stone. So, stone brick, chiseled, mossy, cobblestone walls and stairs, and jungle wood, basically. Moving on, here we have small stables, and I'm starting a building specifically for storage. You'll notice that it's a couple blocks off the ground, to prevent the gold from the ground from passing through. At the front is a platform with stairs, but also a crude crane to grab crates and such and lift them up. We could park a cart underneath, for example. I thought it was kind of original and fun. Last but not least, a building that turned out much bigger than I thought. A big pen for pigs. Now, during the Middle Ages, there were two main types of meat: pork and poultry, chickens and such. Mainly pigs, something like one pig per family, that they would feed during a year to eat at Christmas. So the Christmas pork was one of the only times of the year when a peasant could eat meat. I added a well in the center of the courtyard, which seemed important in a farm. The main building provides storage, but also habitation, I'm sure. There might also be living quarters above the pig pen. We added animals to the server, but for the moment they are hard to control. We need to find a way to have them spawn thanks to eggs, but not on their own in the middle of nowhere. I currently have cows and sheep running wild on the whole map. The farm turned out to be much bigger than planned, and it's quite close to the other buildings, such as the inn. And we have the chicken pen over here, and the wall that we talked about earlier, to protect the building from the rigors of the sea. And we have the same thing on this storage building, a bit broken down, but always made out of solid stone. Moving on to the second building, the Manor. It's a special build for several reasons. It's inspired by dwellings of lords and low-ranking knights, which appear as early as the 13th century, which actually surprised me. But this build is actually much closer to what we would find around the 16th century. So be careful, this building is completely anachronistic. It shouldn't be in this 14th century village, but I really wanted to build it, and I went ahead anyway. When I was telling Oriendo about wanting to build a manor, he said, "No problem, something with 2 stories, one for the servants." And it turns out to be quite a bit bigger, with a porch, balconies, huge roofs, so it doesn't really correspond to the period. And as it evolves, I find it looks a bit like even a winter cabin, partly because there is so much wood. I probably should have put a bit more stone. Someone with such a house can definitely afford stone. Now I've moved on to the stables, which definitely go hand in hand with such a wealthy lodging. The roof mixes the 2 styles that we've done, and we'll find this mix all over the manor in the end. I'm starting the patterns all over the manor, but I wasn't happy with them at all. They're too close to the ones on the inn in the center of town, and to be honest, they're just too regular. Now for the entrance, I wanted something huge that really hit you when you got close. It doesn't make sense history-wise, but I think it's fun. This also works towards a log cabin feel. Around now, I decided to take a break and start tackling other parts of the domain, because I wasn't happy with the result. It lacked fantasy, but everything will change quite soon. To start us off, I built a gazebo out back, where there could be small gatherings, perhaps a bench on which the owner's daughter would come to brush her hair, and a small building for the gardener where he can store all his tools. Not too close to the manor, of course. We wouldn't want the gardener to get too close to the aforementioned daughter. Back to the actual manor house, you may notice that I rounded off the right side of the building, which I think was a great idea. It justifies the fact that that part sticks out. The terrace is also something that didn't exist at the time, but part of the whole point is simply to have fun, and in the end I was quite happy with the results. The patterns are all changing. After I went to have a look at the very first test patterns that were made for the village, I realized I was starting to use the same kind of style in every build, and I strived to change that. I added bits here and there to break any symmetry, to go back to my original idea of the build. This site is a great example of how I brought together the town and the field styles, especially with the roofs. It's definitely a wealthy building, but it is in the countryside, and as they say, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Another reason is much more technical. Quite simply, it would have been much too high and not well proportioned. Just above the terrace is a sort of balcony, a gallery, which looks better than simple windows. And I'm using the same shape as the front of the building for the main window. I thought the garden needed something, and I built a fountain, which uses the same design as the one in town for the moment, but I'll change it in the future. Ultimately, I want it to be half fountain, half pond, but this is something that I will come back to in the very last episode of the series, when I will polish everything to do with nature on the map. That definitely changes the feel of a map. That's what we do at LanguageCraft on our projects, and it goes much farther than using simple trees everywhere. To top off the manor, we have a final tower that fills in a hole in the roof and brings just a little more height and complexity to the building. Coming in on the road from town, the manor has its own path leading away into what might become a wooded area. It looks like the owner likes his privacy. It's a long ways away. You know, I like to put roleplay in my builds, and I imagine someone who might be a lord, but he's a rival of the town's lord. Maybe he ultimately wants to replace him. Meanwhile, he's living the life, with probably several floors just for his servants. His wife doesn't have a very strong character, but his daughter is beautiful. Everyone wants to marry her, but he won't let anyone have her. He's waiting for the right person so he can get the right favor. We'll probably place a ship off the dock here to make use of the coast. I think this spot is really great for this manor. And that just about wraps it up for the periphery of the town. The only thing missing on this side of the river is the castle, which will actually be quite central. Now looking at the map, you can see just how far the manor is from the rest of the village. It changes the shape of the whole map. So thank you all for watching. It took a long time because I struggled with the theme, but I'm glad I stuck to it. I think it turned out really nice. Just a little heads up, I am currently in the United States, away from home, away from my computer, and it's hard for me to work on the next episode, so I'm not quite sure when it's going to come out. Hopefully at the end of July, otherwise beginning of June for sure. Alright, I'll see you next time.